everyone, I'm Frank Malakot. I'm an anchor, reporter for KTVU Fox 2 here in the San Francisco Bay Area. My guest is the Dean of College of Nursing at the University of Phoenix. She's here to talk about Halloween night. It's on a Saturday after all, and how to be safe when you're out trick-or-treating or delivering candy as well in our COVID world. Let's say hi to Kathleen Winston. Kathleen, good to have you with us.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
All right. Well, there are different rules out there depending on where you live. You got to check your county, your state, that kind of thing. Some communities have banned it altogether, and some, hey, just go out and have fun, kids. What are cardinal rules to kind of live by if you want your kids to go out and be safe?
I think the cardinal rules are the same cardinal rules pre-COVID-19 and in COVID-19 and post-COVID-19. I think they're, from a health perspective, they're really the same. And that is common sense, of making sure you understand that it's sort of a complicated question. You know, it depends on a lot of variables. And so the adults involved have to be really the grown-ups in the decision-making, in recognizing that what are the concerns and what are the risks. If I live in a really urban area, I'm going to probably have greater close contact risk than if I live in a more rural area. Again, as you mentioned, you wanted to find out what is it your local community has already established as parameters and rules for how you're going to stay safe. But some of the cardinal ones that I like to talk about are just first assessing or kind of identifying what is your own risk, what is your family's risk. And again, it doesn't matter if we're talking about COVID or some other infectious disease. Halloween happens every year in flu season. It's one of our ways that we kick off flu season. So what are the important things? All the way up to that, it should be the standard things of, you know, good personal hygiene, good environmental hygiene, really great diet, and lots of good rest. These are children. They should have a life that's built around schedules and health behaviors anyway. So now we're talking Saturday night, it's trick-or-treating, making sure that they're dressed appropriately, and what that might mean, depending on your community, that you're going to have to integrate your mask into the costume that you maybe choose to wear. We don't want anybody wearing a costume mask that we would normally wear for Halloween over a face mask, because that constricts your breathing a little bit more, and it's already a little bit of a challenge for people when they're wearing a face mask sometimes. So making sure that that you don't double mask. I decided that maybe we'll see a lot of doctors and nurses costuming this year, and
Right.
then that way they can come in their PPE and be out trick or treating. It's a good idea to try and stay trick or treating with your family more than individuals that you don't know, and keeping obviously distance. When I think back to trick or treating with my own daughter, I remember that we generally trick or treated with just the family when she was young. And when they got to the adolescent stage, they like to trick or treat with their friends. So moms and dads need to make some decisions. The adults need to make some decisions about what really does that look like in terms of safety, and how much freedom are you going to give them in terms of safety. And again, safety means not only making sure that we are that we're keeping a good physical distance from people, but it's also making sure you don't go out if you've been feeling sick. And it's respecting those houses that choose to keep their lights off because they are maybe making that decision that they just don't want to participate, or that they are themselves part of a vulnerable population. Maybe they're an older individual.
Right.
Maybe there's somebody that has someone in the home that has a compromised condition. So those are some of the things that we want to do. Avoid anything like we do typically right now, which is large crowds in close contact, and making sure that maybe have hand sanitizer with you or hand wipes with you that they use periodically between houses, some of those kinds of practical activities. And then, of course, thinking about all the alternatives that we've thought about for child safety issues for many years now, which is maybe limiting your area only to your own neighborhood, rather than sometimes taking children to neighborhoods outside of their general area of living.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. And I think in our crazy little world, even COVID aside, a lot of parents do that. You're going to stick and stay within about a quarter mile here, so we can keep an eye on you. Let's talk about the the families that do want to hand out candy. There's probably a good way and a bad way to do that, because you want the parents of these kids and the kids, if they're older especially, to know that, hey, this is safe. You can't all dig into the bowl. Maybe you put them in separate packets. You ring the doorbell and then they can grab one. There's no touching, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I personally enjoy about Halloween is watching how creative people can be.
Right.
So we can think about those individuals that are going to be giving out candy. What are the creative ways that they can think to do that? Yes, they can. Maybe they'll put the individually wrapped candy in a bowl outside. Maybe they will. If they're a younger adult and they're very healthy, if they decide they are going to open the door, they'll have a mask on themselves and they'll just not spend a lot of time in interaction, but just giving that child that piece of candy into their candy bag. And reminding those children, if the parents are walking with them and they're on the corner and the children go up to the front door area to get that piece of candy, making sure that we limit the children to being up there, one or two at a time, and no more than three or four perhaps in a group that goes up. So you kind of just pace it and time it. And I think about just being considerate. Again, looking back to my own child's trick or treat days, when a large group of 8 or 9 kids, we might hold back a little bit and let some of these smaller groups get through before you go up. And then also, I think making sure that the children have the responsibility of not grabbing that hand into the bowl and grabbing a
Right.
lot of candy, but taking one candy or picking it up one at a time. A lot of people are making the decision that they are, making sure everything is individually wrapped. You're probably going to see a lot less homemade items, but rather just the same kind of thing that you might purchase at the store itself if you were doing that. So I think from a parent point of view, really establishing what are the ground rules, right? What are the ground rules that I'm going to give to you as my child that are age appropriate, whether I'm a young school age child or a later, older school age child. Um, Not using, trying to limit the number of props maybe that we take out for the for the activity to tempt everybody for the interaction that sometimes brings. Having again that hand sanitizer, just remembering and practicing all those really good hygiene things that I want you to practice during flu season anyway, just to always the goal of just reducing the risk.
Yeah.
But the other thing I think that's important to mention is I don't want everybody to panic. So your child opens up a piece of chocolate and pops it in their mouth. We know that COVID does not spread. At this point, the information we have is that it does not spread in that kind of a way. And so there's no reason for us as the adults to add additional fear to an already sort of sometimes overly fearful setting. And just know that that's in the ground rules you might establish ahead of time that we're not going to open candy until we're actually all at home again. And some parents might do that anyway.
Well, let's talk about that, because that's the spoils. The kids get home. I used to bring a pillowcase, and we'd walk 2 or 3 miles, when we were 6th and 7th graders. Then you dump it
Right.
out onto the carpet. You go, all right, 2 Nestle's Crunch, Milk Duds, don't like those. So you start to go through it, but maybe a parent should sit there with you and go, no, that one looks a little weird, and especially the homemade stuff. You just can't do that anymore. Even prior to COVID, I think a lot of parents just said, no, we don't want to go there.
I agree. I think you're absolutely right. And I think some of the practices, even as you just mentioned for yourself, are very similar to what children are probably going to be doing this year. And I think that within parameters of maintaining, a sort of a just, it's always about being vigilant, but not hyper vigilant. It's always about, saying, yeah, they dump out those candies. And if the parents are assisting with them and helping them sort through them, again, depending on the age. I mean, I can see those 6th grade boys, right, dumping out their candy together and negotiating and
Right.
bidding. And in some ways, it probably is as much the game as of doing that as it is actually eating it. We do know, and you'll probably hear some critics say something like, well, wait, we've learned that, SARS COVID-2 can, those particles could last up to 72 hours. But again, it's a complicated issue. I like from a scientific, which science by itself is not designed to be political. So the science of that tells us that they determined that yes, there were examples in a study where some of the COVID droplet um, virus could live up to 72 hours on a plastic surface. But that was we have to understand, we do that experiment in a laboratory setting, in the most pristine of settings, which allows for the greatest risk possible to present itself to us.
Mhm.
So the reality is, we're not going to, in the vast majority of cases, see any kind of transmission that will happen as a risk of touching the candy wrappers, or even that one that the child slips into their mouth when they're running down the street before mom tells them not to. We're not going to find that COVID is going to, or even the influenza A or B, depending on which we're going to have this year, is going to really create that problem. What I want, as a nurse, is what Florence Nightingale taught us 200 years ago, and that is, before we had antibiotics, and when we still had lots of microbes out there, whether it was bacteria, viral, or fungi, it was good hygiene, washing your hands, fresh air and vitamin D, sunshine, rest, and a good diet, a clean environment, and you're going to prevent and minimize the effects when you do have any kind of a contagious illness. So
Well,
I always go back to that and remind parents when they get home. My hope is that when all this is gone, I'm going to still be walking around going, "Are you washing your hands?"
no kidding. Maybe the flu will go down. I think we're all. I've never used so much hand sanitizer in my life, and I'm getting used to the mask. But I must admit, I'm starting to get burnt out on that a little bit. But I haven't had a cold since last year, so maybe there is some good coming out of this.
Right, absolutely. There's always the silver lining of remembering to be good hand washing. And I love what some people are saying too. They're like, well, the reason people keep movie seats between them empty is because it's not our inclination to be that close to people on a regular, sustained basis. So it's true. If it's about being really aware and intentional about whatever behaviors we engage in, and that by itself will help us to reduce the spread of infectious illnesses.
Well, maybe the millennials will be the healthiest of the bunch because they're developing very good habits, Kathleen. Um, One last thing, I guess some folks are, bypassing the trick or treating, but they're, having candy hunts in their backyard, or maybe inviting the neighborhood kids over, and keeping their distance and showing off their costumes and giving them candy. So there's other things you can do to, make it a festive night for kids if you're not comfortable with them knocking on doors.
Absolutely. And I think that you bring up some really good points. They're talking about, pumpkin carving gatherings where, just known people are together and they're doing pumpkin carving. And as you said, it's sort of like the Easter egg hunt. Now we're turning it into a Halloween hunt for
Right.
their candy. So there are lots of creative things that individuals can do, particularly if they are individuals that maybe are at a little bit greater risk, or have members of their family that are a little bit greater risk, and they want to have a celebration and not minimize the fun that goes along with that, but just do it in a safer and more creative way.
What's your favorite candy bar, Kathleen?
Oh, I gotta say that Reese's peanut butter
Oh
cup
man,
gets
you
me
won.
every
Yeah,
time.
there you go. Chocolate and peanut butter, man. That rules. She is Kathleen Winston. If people want to get in touch with you, how do they do it if they want more information?
They want more information, they can contact us at phoenix.edu and College of Nursing, and you'll find me.
Okay. She's Kathleen Winston. I'm Frank Malico. Kathleen, some great stuff. Can't wait to see your costume in a couple of weeks.
Thank you so much.
Lots of PPE, I would imagine.
Yeah, that, and I do think I have a few colleagues that think I might be coming in on a broom, so we'll see.
Oh, there you go. All right. Well, that's always a good standby. She's Kathleen Winston, the Dean of College of Nursing at the University of Phoenix. A pleasure. I'm Frank Malicote. If you'd like more information, you go to newsnowfox.com as well. Have a good day, everybody.